The wind howled across the barren land, carrying dust and sharp cold through the cracks of the old wooden house. Inside, an old man sat near a small fire, his hands stretched out for warmth. His back ached from years of labor, his beard was long and gray and his eyes heavy with loneliness. For many years he had lived alone in this house on the edge of the village, far from the noise and troubles of others. He thought his quiet life would end in silence. Until that night, a sudden knock echoed against the door, sharp and desperate. The old man frowned, his heart beating fast. No one came here, not at this hour. The knocking came again, faster, urgent. He rose slowly, leaning on his cane. His bones cracked as he moved toward the door. When he opened it, the cold wind rushed in, almost putting out the fire, and there in the doorway stood a girl. She was small, shivering, her skin pale with faint glowing lines running across it. Her big eyes looked up at him, filled with fear and pleading. Her clothes were torn, her hair wet from the storm. She whispered something in a trembling voice, words that were not human, words he could not understand. For a moment, the old man only stared. His mind told him to close the door to protect himself, but his heart, heavy with years of sorrow and kindness, could not. He reached out, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Her body was so cold it felt like ice. He pulled her inside, shutting the door against the cruel wind. The girl stumbled, almost falling. He caught her before she hit the ground. Her weight was light, fragile, as if she had not eaten for days. He carried her to the chair by the fire. Her eyes followed him, glowing faintly in the dim room. There was something strange about them, something he could not name. He gave her a blanket. Wrapping it around her thin shoulders, she pulled it close, as if it was the only thing keeping her alive. The old man took a wooden bowl and filled it with warm broth he had cooked earlier. Slowly, carefully, he fed her. She ate with shaking hands, as if every spoonful was saving her life. When she finally spoke again, her voice was soft, almost a whisper. This time she used broken words in his tongue. Shelter. Please. Her accent was heavy, her tone desperate. The old man nodded. You can stay. He knew she was not human. Her strange glowing skin and wide eyes told him clearly. Yet he did not care. She was just a girl in need, and his heart could not refuse. The night grew deeper. The storm outside roared, shaking the old wooden walls, but inside there was silence. The girl sat by the fire, watching the flames as if she had never seen them before. The old man studied her quietly, wondering who she was, where she had come from, and why she had appeared at his lonely door. When he asked her name, she lowered her head. Lyra, she whispered. The sound of it was gentle, like the song of a bird. Rest, Lyra, the old man said, pointing to the small bed in the corner. She hesitated, her eyes flickering with something he could not understand. Then she obeyed, curling up under the blankets. Her small frame looked even smaller in the large bed. The old man returned to his chair, watching the fire. He told himself he had done only what was right. A traveler had come in need, and he had given her shelter. That was all. Yet something deep inside whispered that it was not so simple. He could not sleep. The sound of the storm was loud, but it was not the storm that kept him awake. It was the memory of her eyes, glowing faintly in the firelight. Her gaze had not been only fear. It was something else, something he could not name. Hours passed, and just as he began to doze, he heard soft movements. He looked toward the bed. Lyra was awake, sitting up, clutching the blanket tightly to her chest. Her eyes shone brighter now, like twin moons. She whispered words in her alien tongue, her voice low and trembling. He could not understand, but the sound carried pain, need, and longing. The old man leaned back, closing his eyes. He told himself she was only afraid, only dreaming. Tomorrow he would ask her more. He would find out why she had come, but tonight he would let her rest. Yet as the fire burned low and the storm outside raged, he felt something stir in the quiet house. Something strange, something dangerous. And he did not yet know that the night he opened the door to a stranger was the night his lonely life would change forever. Morning came slowly. The storm outside had passed, leaving the land quiet and washed clean. The old man woke early, his bones aching as usual. He stretched and looked around the small house. His eyes fell on the girl still curled up on his bed, wrapped tightly in the blankets. She looked fragile, like a bird fallen from the sky. For a moment he thought she was only a dream. But then she stirred, her glowing eyes blinking open. They locked on him, silent, watching. The old man felt a strange shiver run through him. He was used to silence, used to waking alone. Now there was another presence in his home, and it unsettled him, yet also warmed him. "Good morning," he said softly. His voice was rough with age. The girl tilted her head, trying to understand. Then she whispered back in broken words, "Good morning." Her accent was thick, but her effort touched him. He gave her bread and warm tea. She accepted it with both hands, bowing her head in thanks. The old man noticed her hands trembled, not just from hunger, but from something deeper. Her skin carried a faint heat, though the air was still cool. He did not ask, not yet. The villagers began their day outside, their voices carrying faintly to the house. Already whispers had begun. The old man had taken in a stranger, an alien girl. People were suspicious, they always were. But he ignored them. As far as he cared, she was only a soul in need, and his door had opened to her. The girl, Lyra, followed him as he went about his chores. She stayed close, her eyes always fixed on him. When he chopped wood, she watched. When he carried water, she followed. It was as if she feared he might vanish if she looked away. At first, he thought she was simply afraid of the villagers. They had a way of making outsiders feel unwelcome, but her closeness felt different. There was something more in the way she clung to him with her eyes, as if there was a silent bond forming. That night, he made her a place near the fire. She lay down quietly, but he noticed how her breathing grew uneven. Her body shifted under the blanket, restless. He thought she was cold, so he placed another blanket over her. She gave him a look, half gratitude, half something else, something he could not name. When the fire burned low, he woke to soft whispers. Lyra was speaking in her alien tongue, her voice trembling. The words carried both fear and longing, though he did not understand them. He sat quietly, pretending to sleep, listening, wondering what secrets she carried inside. The next day he walked to the village market, Lyra at his side. The villagers stopped and stared. Some muttered, some shook their heads. Why is the old man keeping her? One whispered, "She is not even human," said another. The old man ignored them, but he saw the way Lyra lowered her head, shame burning on her face. She held on to his sleeve, as if drawing strength from his presence. He bought her new clothes, simple but clean. When she wore them, she looked less like a lost creature and more like a young woman. Yet still her glowing eyes gave her away. She could never fully hide what she was. As they returned home, she tugged lightly at his hand. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was soft, but her eyes carried something heavier, deeper. The old man nodded. "You're safe here," he replied. That night she insisted on helping him. She brought wood, stirred the pot, and tried to speak more words in his language. Her mistakes made her blush, and he found himself smiling in a way he had not for many years. But as the evening stretched on, her restlessness grew. She walked the small house again and again, touching, the walls glancing at him, breathing faster. The old man grew uneasy. He wondered if she was sick. He asked if she was in pain, but she shook her head quickly. "No, no pain," she said, though her voice trembled. When she thought he was not watching, her hand pressed against her chest, her glowing skin pulsing faintly, her eyes closed tightly, as if fighting against something inside. The old man did not know what to do. He told himself it was exhaustion, the result of hunger and storm. But deep inside, a small voice whispered that it was something more. Later, when the fire dimmed and shadows filled the house, she came to his chair. Her eyes glowed faint in the darkness. She knelt beside him, clutching the blanket close. "Warm," she whispered. He hesitated, then placed his hand gently on her shoulder. She leaned into it, her breathing uneven. His heart ached, not from age, but from the strange closeness of this girl. He told himself he was only giving comfort. Yet the way she pressed her head against his arm felt like more than simple comfort. As he lay in bed that night, her presence lingered in his thoughts. The whispers she spoke when she thought he could not hear, the way her eyes glowed when she looked at him, the heat in her skin. None of it made sense, but one thing was certain. His quiet home was no longer the same. The girl had brought warmth, not just to the fire, but to the emptiness of his heart, and while he told himself he had saved her, he could not escape the feeling that in some secret way she had come to claim him. Days turned into weeks. The old man's house, once quiet and lifeless, now carried the sound of footsteps, soft words, and the faint glow of the alien girl's presence. Lyra stayed close to him at all times, like a shadow that refused to leave. When he rose in the morning, she was already awake, waiting by the fire. When he stepped outside, she followed, never more than a few steps behind. At first, he thought it was fear, the fear of being left alone again. But soon he realized it was something deeper. She clung to him not only for safety, but as if drawn by an invisible thread, the villagers noticed. Their stares grew sharper, their whispers louder. Some laughed behind his back. "The old fool has taken a pet," they said. Others shook their heads, muttering of bad omens. The old man ignored them. He had lived too long to care about the gossip of others, yet at night when the house was quiet, he wondered about the strange closeness between them. Why did she watch him with such intense eyes, glowing faintly in the dark? Why did her hand tremble whenever it brushed against his? One evening, he was mending an old chair by the fire. Lyra sat across from him, pretending to read one of his books, though she barely understood the words. Suddenly, the chair leg snapped, and he cursed under his breath. She jumped at the sound, rushing to his side. Her hand grabbed his without thinking. Her touch was hot, her fingers trembling. For a moment, neither of them moved. The old man looked down at her hand, so small compared to his. Her glowing skin pulsed faintly against his rough fingers. Lyra's eyes widened. She pulled back quickly, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. She whispered something in her alien tongue, then turned away, hugging herself as if she had revealed too much. That night he could not sleep. He kept remembering the way her hand had clung to his, not in fear, but in something else. Something unspoken. His heart, long hardened by age and solitude, felt heavy and restless. The next morning, when he stepped outside to chop wood, he noticed Lyra standing in the doorway. She watched him with silent eyes. Her lips parted as if to speak, but she said nothing. She only watched each swing of his axe, her breathing quickening. By noon, he grew tired and wiped the sweat from his brow. Lyra hurried forward, offering him water. When their fingers touched on the jug, the same shiver ran through her. This time, she did not pull away. Instead, she looked at him with wide, glowing eyes that seemed to beg for something he could not understand. The old man turned away, confused. His mind told him she was only grateful, only lonely, but his heart whispered a different story. Later in the market, the whispers grew worse. A group of villagers gathered, pointing at the two of them. "Why is she always with him?" One man sneered. "It is unnatural." Another said. The old man clenched his jaw, but before he could speak, Lyra stepped closer to him, gripping his arm tightly. Her glowing eyes stared at the villagers with defiance. The crowd fell silent, unsettled by her gaze. The old man placed his hand gently over hers, and together they walked away. Neither spoke of it, but something had changed. She had claimed him before others, and he had allowed it. That evening, the bond between them grew stronger. She insisted on helping with everything: cooking, cleaning, carrying wood. Though she was small and often stumbled, each time she fell, he reached for her. Each time their hands touched, her breath caught, her eyes shining brighter. When the fire burned low that night, she sat beside him, closer than ever before. Her shoulder brushed against his arm. He felt the warmth of her body, too warm for comfort. He looked down at her, and she looked back. Their eyes met, and in that, silence. Something passed between them, something that needed no words. The old man turned away quickly. His heart pounded. He told himself it was wrong, foolish. He was old, she was young and not even human. Yet his heart betrayed him. Beating, fast like it had not in many years, Lyra whispered softly. Safe. With you. Her voice shook, as if she feared he would push her away. He nodded slowly, unable to say more. But that night, when she lay in the bed, he heard her whispering again in her alien tongue. Her voice was low, almost broken. He could not understand the words, but he knew the meaning. It was the sound of longing, of a heart reaching out. He turned on his chair, staring into the fire. His hands gripped the armrest. His thoughts spun in circles. The bond was there, unseen but strong, pulling them together, stronger every day, and deep inside, though he would not yet admit it, he knew this was no longer just a story of kindness. It was something more, something dangerous, something that could not be ignored for much longer. The market was busy that morning. Voices of merchants filled the air. People shouted prices, animals pulled carts, and the smell of bread mixed with the dust of the road. The old man walked slowly, his cane tapping against the ground. Beside him walked Lyra, close as always, her glowing eyes lowered as the villagers stared. Whispers followed them. Some laughed, some sneered, some simply shook their heads. Why does he keep her? One woman said. She is not of us, another added. The old man ignored their words. He was too old to care about gossip, yet he noticed how Lyra's hands tightened on his sleeve, her body trembling slightly. At one stall he traded wood for grain. As he turned to leave, a merchant from far lands stopped him. The man's skin was dark, his face lined with years of travel. His eyes fell on Lyra, widening with sudden recognition. He whispered something, in a tongue the old man did not know. Then, leaning closer, he said in broken words, Old one, do you know what she is? The old man frowned. She is only a girl who needed shelter, he said. The merchant shook his head, his voice lowering to a warning. Not only girl, her kind. They change when season comes. She is in it now. The old man's heart tightened. Season, he repeated, not understanding. The merchant nodded, his eyes full of pity. Her body, fire inside. It chooses, if not answered, it breaks them. Some die, some lose mind. Only the one near them can ease it. The old man felt his chest grow heavy. He looked at Lyra, who kept her head bowed, her cheeks flushed. She had heard every word he tried to speak, but the merchant raised a hand. Be careful. If you stay, you are chosen already. Then the man turned away, leaving silence behind. The old man stared at Lyra. She refused to meet his eyes. Her hands shook as she pulled her hood over her glowing face. Together they walked back through the village, whispers chasing them like shadows. When they reached the safety of the house, the old man finally spoke. Lyra, is it true? His voice was gentle but heavy with unease. She stood by the fire, her back to him. Her shoulders trembled. For a long time she said nothing. Then in a broken voice, she whispered, Yes. He sat heavily in his chair. His mind turned in circles. What does it mean? He asked, slowly. She turned, her glowing eyes filled with shame. My people, they call it season, time when body chooses mate, cannot stop, cannot run. If no one close, body weak, mind break. She lowered her head. That is why I was sent away. The old man's chest ached. He had lived a life full of burdens, but this one was heavier than most. He looked at her, so small, so young, so fragile, and wondered why fate had brought her to his door. Why me? He asked softly. Her lips trembled. Because you gave me shelter. You stayed near me. My body, it feels you, I cannot change it. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. The fire crackled softly, filling the silence. The old man rubbed his tired hands over his face. He wanted to believe it was only her fear, only her loneliness, but deep inside, he remembered the warmth of her hand, the way her eyes followed him, the way she leaned close as if drawn to him by something unseen. That night, the air inside the house felt heavier. Lyra sat near the fire, her skin glowing faintly. She tried to eat, but the food remained untouched. She whispered to herself in her alien tongue, her voice carrying pain. The old man watched her, helpless. His mind told him to send her away, to free himself from this burden, yet his heart would not allow it. He could not abandon her, not after seeing her eyes filled with such fear and shame. At one point, she rose and walked to the door. She opened it slightly, letting the cold night wind touch her skin. Then she whispered, "If I leave, I die. If I stay, you suffer." Her voice broke. The old man rose slowly, his cane tapping the floor. He closed the door gently. His hand rested on her shoulder. "You will not die," he said firmly. She turned, tears glowing in her strange eyes. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, she buried her face against his chest, trembling. He held her, not knowing if it was right or wrong, only knowing that he could not let her fall apart. That night, he sat awake long after she slept. His thoughts twisted like tangled roots. The merchant's warning echoed in his ears. The truth of her season weighed on his heart. He was no longer simply her protector. Whether he wanted it or not, fate had tied him to her. Outside, the night was silent. But inside, the whispers of her season grew louder, and the old man knew the days ahead would test both his heart and his soul. The days grew heavier after the merchant's warning. The old man could no longer pretend Lyra was only a lost girl in need of shelter. Every glance, every touch, every moment near her carried a weight he could not explain. Lyra tried to act normal. She followed him in his chores. She helped gather wood. She fetched water from the well. But her steps grew slower, her hands weaker. Sometimes she stopped and leaned against the wall, her chest rising and falling too fast. The old man watched her with worry. He asked if she was ill. She shook her head, forcing a smile. "Not sick," she whispered, but her glowing eyes betrayed her. They were brighter now, shining even in the daylight. Her skin carried warmth like a hidden fire. At night, her restlessness grew. She tossed in bed, clutching the blanket, whispering words in her alien tongue. Sometimes her voice cracked with pain. Sometimes her fingers gripped the sheets so tightly her knuckles turned pale. The old man sat in his chair, unable to sleep, listening. His chest ached. He wanted to help her, but he did not know how. He told himself this was not his burden. Yet every time she called softly in her sleep, his heart pulled toward her. One evening, as the sun fell behind the hills, Lyra tried to cook. Her hands shook so badly that the spoon clattered to the floor. She froze, staring at it, then suddenly swayed. The old man rushed forward, catching her before she collapsed. Her body was burning hot, hotter than any fever he had ever felt. He carried her to the chair by the fire, her head resting against his chest. Her lips moved, forming a single word. "Name," she whispered. Her glowing eyes opened weakly, locking on him. "Your name." His throat tightened. "Edrin," he said, giving her the name he had not spoken in years. Her trembling lips repeated it softly. "Edrin." Then she closed her eyes, breathing shallowly. He stayed by her side all night, pressing a cool cloth against her skin. Her heat only grew. Her fingers reached blindly, always finding his hand. She clung to it as if it was the only anchor holding her in this world. The next morning she tried to rise but stumbled. Her knees gave way. He caught her again. His voice was rough with worry. "You must rest, Lyra." She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "If I rest, I lose," she whispered. "Season, it eats me." Her words stabbed his heart. He understood now what the merchant had meant. Her body was not simply ill, it was fighting against time, and he was the only one near enough to matter, he felt. Trapped, torn between fear and compassion, he had offered her shelter and kindness. Not knowing this truth, now her survival depended on him. That night, the bond between them tightened. She sat near him by the fire, her small frame trembling, her glowing eyes never leaving his face. "Stay, please," she begged softly. He nodded, not knowing what else to do. As the hours passed, she leaned closer. Her shoulder brushed against his, her breathing uneven. She whispered broken words. "You, safe, my only safe." The old man's chest pounded. He told himself he was too old, too broken. Yet her closeness stirred something long buried. His heart beat like it had not in many years, when she finally collapsed again. Whispering his name in a desperate voice, he lifted her gently and carried her to the bed. She clutched his shirt, refusing to let go. He stayed beside her, sitting on the edge, her glowing eyes staring at him even as sleep pulled her down. The next day, the villagers knocked at his door. A group of them stood outside, their faces filled with suspicion. "Old man," one said, "that alien girl brings danger. We have heard whispers. You must send her away before her curse spreads." The old man's jaw tightened. He looked back at Lyra, pale and trembling on the bed. Then he turned to the villagers. "She stays," he said firmly. His voice carried such weight that even the boldest among them fell silent. They muttered, but left. When he returned to her, she smiled faintly through her weakness. "You protect," she whispered. He placed a hand on her forehead, feeling the fire of her season burning stronger than ever. That night was the worst yet. Her body shook with fever. Her voice broke as she whispered his name again and again. "Adrian, Adrian." Her glowing eyes shimmered with tears. She pulled at his hand, pressing it against her chest as if begging him to keep her alive. The old man sat frozen. His heart battled against his mind. He told himself he could not, should not. But her trembling body, her desperate voice, her glowing eyes all begged for him alone. In that moment he understood the truth. The bond had already been chosen, whether he had wanted it or not. He was the one tied to her season, the one she needed, the one she had claimed. And though fear gripped him, though doubt filled his heart, he knew one thing clearly: he could not let her die. The night felt heavier than all the nights before. The fire burned low, shadows stretched across the walls, and the sound of Lyra's shallow breathing filled the room. The old man, Edron, sat by her side, his hand caught in hers. She clung to him with desperate strength, her glowing eyes half closed, her body trembling as if caught between life and death. Her season was no longer a secret. It raged through her like a storm. Her skin burned with fever, her words broken, her voice cracking as she whispered his name again and again. "Edron, Adron." He wiped the sweat from her brow. His heart ached. He had once thought he would live out his last years in quiet solitude, but now he faced a choice that could change everything. When dawn touched the horizon, Lyra tried to sit up. Her hands shook, her voice weak. "I must tell you," she whispered, "before it is too late." Edron leaned close, his voice rough. "Save your strength." But she shook her head, glowing tears sliding down her cheeks. "My people cast me out because of this. They feared my season. They feared I would cling to one not chosen by them." She looked at him with trembling lips. "But my body chose you. I cannot fight it. I do not want to fight it." Her words struck deep. He felt as if the air had been stolen from his lungs. She was not only suffering, she was choosing him. He looked at his hands, old, scarred, worn by years of labor. He thought of his reflection in the cracked mirror, gray hair, wrinkled skin, tired eyes. And then he looked at her, young, glowing, fragile, her heart laid bare. "It cannot be me," he whispered. "I am too old, my days are nearly done." But Lyra shook her head fiercely. Her hands reached for his, clutching them tightly. No, Edrin. You are the only one. You gave me shelter. You gave me safety. My heart knows you. My body knows you, please. Do not leave me. His chest felt like it would break. He wanted to run from this truth, yet when he saw her tears, when he felt her trembling hands, he knew he could not turn away. That evening, the sky darkened with heavy clouds. Rain pattered softly against the roof. Inside, Lyra's fever worsened. Her body shook, her whispers turning into cries. She pulled at his arm, pressing her glowing face against his shoulder. Please, Edrin, do not let me die alone. He closed his eyes, his heart pounded with fear. His mind screamed at him that this was madness. But his soul whispered another truth. He had lived alone for too long. He had known silence, emptiness, sorrow. Now fate had given him a bond he did not seek yet could not deny. Slowly he placed his hand against her cheek. Her skin burned under his touch. Her glowing eyes met his, filled with tears and desperate hope. Edrin, she whispered. Choose me. The words echoed in the small house like a command from the heavens. His throat tightened. He had a choice. Walk away and let her wither, or stay and share a bond that would change them both forever. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time in years, he felt alive. Not as an old man waiting for the end, but as someone needed, someone chosen. His answer came softly, but it carried the weight of his soul. I will not let you die, Lyra. Her eyes widened, glowing brighter. A sob escaped her lips, half relief, half joy. She pressed her forehead against his chest, whispering his name like a prayer. Her trembling eased as his arms wrapped around her, holding her close. The fire crackled, the storm raged outside, but in that small house, a bond was sealed. Not by force, not by pity, but by choice. His choice. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt safe not only in body but in spirit. And for the first time in many years, Edrin felt the warmth of another's trust, another's love. The night stretched long, filled with quiet words and gentle closeness. Each breath she took steadied under his presence. Each whisper of his name grew softer, less desperate. And as dawn touched the land once more, Lyra lay sleeping, peacefully for the first time since her arrival, her glowing skin calmed, her breathing steady. She held his hand against her chest, as if she feared he might vanish if she let go. Edrin sat awake beside her, his eyes heavy but his heart alive. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. The villagers would whisper louder. Danger might come from her kind, yet none of it mattered. He had made his choice. She was his now, and he was hers. Bound by a season neither of them had expected, but both had embraced, and in that choice, the old man discovered a truth he thought long lost. Life was not finished for him. It had only begun again. The morning after his choice, the world outside seemed strangely quiet. The rain had stopped, the air was clear, and sunlight streamed through the cracks of the shutters. Inside, Lyra still lay curled against Edrin, her glowing skin calm, her breathing soft and steady. For the first time since she had entered his home, she looked at peace. Edrin studied her face in the gentle light. He saw the faint glow of her eyes even in sleep. He felt the warmth of her small hand still holding tightly to his. His heart was heavy with both fear and wonder. He had made his choice, and there was no turning back. When she stirred, her eyes opened slowly. They met his, and for a moment she looked uncertain, as if afraid he would regret the words he had spoken the night before. But when she whispered his name, Edrin, he answered softly, I am here. Her lips trembled into a smile. She pressed her forehead to his chest, her voice breaking with relief. Not alone, she whispered. The days that followed brought change. Lyra grew stronger with each sunrise. The fire that had burned dangerously within her now settled, balanced by his presence. Her glow softened, no longer wild and painful, but steady and gentle. Whenever he held her hand, she breathed. Easier whenever he spoke her name, she smiled. The villagers, however, were not blind. They saw the closeness between the old man and the alien girl. Their whispers grew sharp. "It is wrong," some said. "It is cursed," others muttered. A few were frightened, fearing her glow meant danger for them all. One afternoon, when Idrin walked to the well with Lyra at his side, a group of men blocked their path. "Old man," the leader said harshly, "you bring shame. That creature is not one of us. Send her away, or we will drive her out." Lyra clutched Idrin's arm, fear flashing in her eyes. Her body trembled, but her gaze did not leave his. She trusted him to stand. Idrin straightened his back, his voice strong despite his years. "She is not a creature. She is under my roof, under my protection. If any hand is raised against her, it is raised against me." The men muttered angrily, but none dared step forward. The strength in his voice, the fire in his eyes silenced them. He had lived among them for decades, and though he was old, they remembered his courage. Slowly they backed away, but their whispers continued as shadows. When they returned home, Lyra's glowing eyes filled with tears. "Why fight for me?" she asked softly. Idrin placed his rough hand against her cheek. "Because you are mine now," he said. The words made her gasp, and then she threw her arms around him, clinging to him as if she would never let go. That night, the bond between them felt unbreakable. Lyra whispered softly in her alien tongue, pressing her hand over his heart. He did not understand the words, but he felt their meaning. She was giving herself fully, not out of desperation anymore, but out of choice. For the first time in many years, Idrin did not feel like an old man waiting for the end. He felt alive, needed, and bound to something greater than himself. As the weeks passed, the villagers' whispers slowly faded. Some still judged, but others began to see the truth. They saw Lyra smile when she walked beside him. They saw the strength return to her body. They saw how Idrin, once a lonely man with no purpose, now stood tall again. Rumors spread that the old man had tamed an alien season. Some feared it, others marveled. But in time, respect replaced fear, for no curse had fallen, no harm had come. Instead, a bond had been forged that even the villagers could not deny. One evening, Lyra sat with him by the fire, her glowing eyes soft, her voice steady. "Idrin, my people cast me out, but you gave me shelter. They left me to die, but you gave me life. Now I give my life to you. All my seasons, all my years, I belong to you." Idrin's throat tightened. He had thought his life ended long ago, yet here sat a girl who had made him feel alive again. He pulled her close, whispering back, "And I belong to you." The fire crackled. The house filled with warmth not only from flame but from two hearts bound together. From that night onward their lives changed. No longer strangers, no longer protector and guest. They were partners, mates chosen by fate. The villagers could whisper all they wanted, but nothing could break the bond forged in fire, pain, and choice. And so, the old man who once lived in silence now lived with laughter, with soft words, with glowing eyes that never left his side. His house was no longer a place of loneliness, but of life. Idrin had opened his door to a stranger, and in doing so he had opened his heart to a love he never thought possible. And Lyra, once abandoned and unwanted, now walked proudly at his side. Her season no longer a curse, but the bond that gave her a home. Together they faced a future unknown, but they faced it hand in hand, bound forever by the choice he made on that stormy night.